So you had your house on the market, you got an offer, and now you're working your way through the contract process and you're doing those mental calculations. How much are you actually going to net from the sale of your home? Today we're going to walk you through a net sheet. This is a document that we prepare for every seller and we present it in lots of scenarios. So let's just jump right in and help you try to plot out what you're going to walk away with. What you're going to see up here, we start at the top and that's the gross proceeds of the sale. And you would take that, that's your selling price. That's your contract price. So we did a couple. We always do a couple different scenarios for our sellers because we're doing it in advance. Sometimes they have to know if they got the low end of what we think it might sell for, is it enough to cover all of their expenses? So you'll see that we do a range. The first line in this one, you'll see it's gross proceeds of 123 Sailboat Street. And we start with the low end at $625 and we go all the way up to $725. If we were looking at a house that was lower in price, we probably wouldn't do as wide a range. So the closing costs of the sale, the first and the biggest one, obviously, is the commission to the brokerage. I'm using here a 5%. Commissions are whatever you negotiate with your seller. It could be, 2% or 10% or whatever you negotiate. But I'm just going to use this just so you can see how this plays out. So the first one is your commission to the brokerage. And of course, that changes if you did agree to a percentage of sale. That will change based on what your sale price is. You'll also want to look at, is your agreement that your commission is based on gross or on net? And that will change it. So you can kind of work this out. For our clients, we would make these adjustments in this sheet before we gave it to them. The next one you got to look at is your attorney's fees. In Rhode Island, the buyer's attorney conducts the closing ceremony. It doesn't have to be that way. They can negotiate something different. Sometimes the parties will both use the same attorney, but a general rule is the buyer's attorney conducts the closing ceremony. So the seller's attorney really, unless it's a complex sale, maybe there's a trust that is selling the property, maybe it's a guardianship, maybe it's they've got a financial advisor involved. As a rule, it's a local closing attorney and they're going to draft your deed. They're going to review your documents if you've requested them to do that. They're going to get into communication with the buyer's lender to make sure that funds are coming through, and they're going to communicate with your seller's agent for you. I put a number in here of $800. That's a negotiable fee. You can work that out with your attorney. I've seen it as low as $400. I've seen it as high as $2,500. It really just depends on the scenario. So you would plug that number in. The next one you got is if you have a mortgage, that mortgage discharge, the proof from the bank that you paid that off has to get recorded at City Hall, and there's a record fee for that. I put $50 in there. I've seen it $25, $50, $75. It's not a big fee, but that's one of your expenses. Rhode Island also charges what we call a tax stamp on the sale of property. This is charged to the sellers. It's $4.60 per $1,000 of the sale. Sounds like a lot, but if you look here, you'll see it's not nothing. It's a chunk of change, but even at $625, it's $2,800 going up to $3,300. So that's a transfer tax on real estate in Rhode Island. You have to pay it. The fire certificate. In Rhode Island, particularly in Rhode Island, I'm sure every state does it, but in Rhode Island, it gets a little bit complicated in some towns. Rhode Island is still feeling the effects of the Station House fire in 2000. And, we take fire very, very seriously here. So you have to pay for the marshal to come out to the house, fire inspector or the marshal, whoever does it in your town, your municipality. And they're just going to make sure that your smokes and your fires are up to code. Your real estate agent will probably handle all of that for you, but you'll see that charge on your closing disclosure. And then you get your estimated net proceeds. So your net proceeds are depending, you may get to that number first before your commission is charged. Again, it depends on whatever you negotiate. The other costs that will change this bottom line are buyer credits. Buyer credits come up in a couple different ways. One, sometimes in your offer, particularly if it's a VA loan or an FHA loan, that buyer might ask you to pay the closing costs. That usually happens if they have a zero down loan. They don't have any cash. So they're trying to work the deal out that you'll contribute cash at the closing. Not up front, not you writing a check, but from your proceeds. Sometimes there are repairs or repair credits. If repairs are big, maybe there's negotiation in there somewhere on how that affects your commission. Or maybe it's just a repair credit. Maybe your buyer said to you, hey, your water heater is 12 years old. It has a 10-year life. We would like a repair credit so we can replace that. But basically, on the seller side, it's pretty easy. On the buyer side, you'll see when you go to closing that they have a bajillion line items, usually because they have a lender. Hope that's helpful to you. Super excited that you have your house under contract. Hope your closing goes smoothly. If you have interest in selling your home, give us a call. It's 401-236-8685. We're Warner Realty Group, making the complex simple.